And good morning, afternoon, and evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Chaotic Culture Podcast, the pod where chaos rules and black culture is supreme. This is your boy, the host and the creator of the Chaotic Culture Podcast, Ked the Pro, aka the Calculated Millennial, aka the Encore presentation. Now, can I get an encore? Do you want more? Aka your favorite toxic adjacent king, Ked the Poet, Ked the Closer, all that good stuff. The 843 is me. Baltimore is the place to be. Always chaotic, never toxic most days. Back again with your favorite black culture highlights and black culture shenanigans. So today I wasn't really sure what kind of episode I was gonna bring you guys for real. For real. I'm being 100% like completely honest. I didn't know if I was gonna do like a SummerSlam review show, and I may still do one, or if I was gonna talk to some of my co-hosts. But it just seems like our times are not aligning correctly. So I might talk to you about a myriad of stuff right here. But I definitely needed to have this episode out because I wanted to give you guys one more episode before we go into our summer break and then come back to you in September. A few new things are happening, of course. Well, for one, this will more than likely be the last time that I record this podcast on my laptop. My laptop has actually been having some serious issues. If you watched the live reaction to SummerSlam this past weekend, then you can see that my laptop absolutely quit on me, and I had to use a different laptop to actually continue the stream. And I don't want to use that laptop for obvious reasons. So I just went ahead and I bought a computer. I was like, you know what? Let me just go ahead and do it. I got the money for it. I didn't want to spend it on that just yet, but I wanted to wait a little longer. But I just decided, you know what? Let me just go ahead and just grab this computer and just get it over with. So I am getting a new computer, and it will be equipped for gaming and streaming. And so, with that in mind, guys, you're gonna see a brand new setup. And yeah, that's kind of what it is. You're gonna see me from a whole new chaos zone. Obviously, it's gonna be set up, perfectly for the podcast and whatnot. And I'm gonna make sure that that shit looks dope as hell in the background. But with that in mind, guys, thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for tuning in this season. This was a long season, and usually our seasons run anywhere between like, I don't know, 25 to 30 episodes a season. But this ran a little longer than normal just because we were like taking breaks in between weeks. We weren't doing the podcast like every week like we used to. It transitioned to every other week. And now that I've moved back to Tuesdays, I'm gonna try to like be a little more consistent and put the episodes out every Tuesday. But I also know that sometimes people have jobs, people have lives, people have kids. So it's really gonna be hard to match what everyone's schedule is. And then on top of that, as you know, my co-hosts are have all been doing different things. NASA is still on a hiatus. She's working on herself, her mental health. She's also working on some music. Law right now is in the middle of basic training with the Navy, so he is not around and whatnot. Sappy, of course, has a busy schedule. Jay has a busy schedule, and of course, Steve travels as well as has a busy schedule as well as has kids. So it's and Jay has kids too. Don't get me wrong, he has a kid too, but he's still, I just focused that on Steve because I know Steve not only has his kids, but he also has his nieces and like his nieces that he's helping raise. So with that in mind, it's a lot for a lot of people to juggle. And so and then there's me. My work schedule is crazy. And then on top of that, like, not only is it crazy, it's also very, very long hours. But thankfully, like on the weekends, I have the ability to record, or at least I have the time to record. I don't like the fact that of course, I have to get up before the crack of dawn, but it is what it is. Work is still work until, I can move on to the next thing. So we'll see. We will absolutely see. But regardless of those facts, we're still going strong. The podcast is still going strong, and we're going to bring some well needed and some new changes to you. Like I said, the setup that you see now is not going to be the setup for the podcast in general anymore, though. Usually I know that when I've like first started doing like the live recordings and whatnot, you would see me on the the leather couch and whatnot, and now you see me on another couch. You see the Kendrick Lamar painting behind me this time, as opposed to like the keyboard that was next to me when I was back in Virginia. So yeah, a lot of changes are happening, even just in general. But you're still going to get and see a brand new setup when the time comes. So in the essence of time, of course, what I do want to do is kind of go over what we went through this season. And then on top of that, just discuss what I liked about the season, what I didn't like about the season, and then go from there. So let's start from the very very first episode. We talked about like we did the music roundtable groups. We did hip hop groups because at the time it was still the 50th anniversary of hip hop. It was 2023. So, you know, obviously we had some back and forth on that as far as what the number one group was going to be, but still it was a great episode. It was a long episode, when one that we actually did on Twitter Spaces or X Spaces or whatever, or Spaces. We just gonna call it Spaces because I do not, and you know what? I'm not going to call it X anymore because it's just Twitter. That's that. Mama named it Twitter. That's what I'm gonna call it. I don't care what Elon says. So yeah, we, if I remember correctly, we had said Outcast was the no. This was hip hop groups. I'm sorry. So I'm trying to remember. This was the episode that caused a lot of controversy because somehow Lil Jon and Eastside Boys ended up winning this one, and I'm at. I just gotta laugh because this is like, yo, how did that end up happening? Clearly, that they are not the best group by any stretch of the imagination. It's just that, unfortunately, some people wanted to cause a little bit of chaos. And I mean, that's kind of what we're all about here. Anything can happen on this show. So there's that. Um, the next episode, of course, we talked about, you know, a few things in episode two. We had discussed, of course, a high school band director being arrested because he was playing after, long after the game. And some people in certain towns aren't used to that and aren't used to like high school students or whatnot playing afterwards. So he ended up being arrested, which was kind of crazy. You have we talked about how at the time the Miami Dolphins just completely dismantled the Denver Broncos and they ended up dropping 70 on them, and it was like, yo, okay, something needs to give. And thankfully the Broncos did get better as the season went on, but yeah, it was not a good episode, or that was not a good game, excuse me. Um we discussed a little bit about Onika and her sexual offender husband. And yeah, we really talked about, what it takes to reset from burnout, because sometimes whether it be work or whether it be, doing this, whether it be something that you love to do, something that are used to doing, that you can experience burnout at any point in time. And it's really just best, to sometimes just sit back, take a break, and let things fall where they may, and just take the time to reset, whether that would be meditating, whether that would be praying, whether that would be a combination of both, whether it would be just taking time for yourself, playing a video game, or just sleeping or exercising, something that helps you reset from that burnout. I think that is very, very vital and very important, and still a very important message that we have to this day. I don't think that we take the time to reset as much as we should. And it's like there are times where we continuously push and push and push and push. And frankly, like that's not a good way to live. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not the way that you should live. And I say that especially for myself. Yes, I work, 4 days out of 7, but those are still 11 and a half to 12-hour days. And then I'm walking most of the time. So there's times where I get tired, but ultimately you just have to find ways to take time for yourself, because if you don't, your body will let you know that it's time to slow down. And it can either be one of those things where it's like, okay, yo, you need to like rest, or it could tell you in a different way. And I don't think any of us want to find out what those different ways are, because that could probably lead to some serious health implications. So the important thing is just to continue to rest from burnout, continue to find those times to reset. I dropped my first bonus episode, of course. That was the NXT No Mercy review. And then that's when I decided that we were going to start doing the wrestling reviews. And yeah, I do need to again do the SummerSlam one, maybe, because SummerSlam is one of the big four. It just, again, schedules didn't align. I kept asking if people were like ready, but things happen. So we also, I guess episode 3 was kind of light. We talked about anxiety, we talked about depression, and just leaning on your support system. And sometimes I think that's very important, and that we don't do enough of that. You know, we have family, we have friends that want to see us succeed, and then sometimes we just don't take the opportunity to lean on them, and we oftentimes will take on those burdens ourselves. And I'm just here to say that there's no need for that. There really isn't. When you have people who love you and care for you, and when you have people who want to see you succeed, lean on them. Now, I know that can't be said for everybody in every family, because there are people and there are families who do not support each other the way that they should. And that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But for the ones that do, and I say this for myself included, use that support system, use that family. They are there for a reason. They're not there just to be there. They're there to support you in every step of the way and to love and care for you. So when you need to lean on them, please do. And granted, I'm not going to say that that's going to cure your anxiety or cure depression, because those are mental health issues that require external help. But, but if your family has the best intentions and they do what they can to help you in times of those situations, then lean on them. They will, the right family members will advocate for you if something else is wrong. So we also talked about Sexy Red having a tape during that time, and she had since dropped another tape, and we're not going to talk about that. Sexy Red's music is oh man, I don't even want to talk about it, man. We talked about the teacher who removed a Greek letter shirt from a 7-year-old, which was kind of like wild. At the same time, we were wondering, why did the mother give them that shirt? But of course, they were, they were. So yeah, of course that happened. But then, of course, we talked about Juicy J's tweet about the decline in hip hop sales and how streaming played a part of that, but also because hip hop was like, especially during the month that we recorded, this was in this very stagnant place. So yeah, we discussed a little bit of that. Then, of course, we did the hip hop duos tournament in episode 4, and rightfully so, Outkast won. There were some other duos that definitely could have won, but literally, like, if Outkast didn't win, I think that a lot of us would have been like, yo, what's going on here? Or if another certain other duos didn't win, we would have definitely we would have had some problems. But yeah, Outkast definitely and rightfully won. Season 5 is when we officially introduced Steve to the podcast, and then of course we discussed Keith Lee's visit to Atlanta. And yeah, Atlanta brunch culture is still garbage. So I personally will not partake. Now, if I happen to go to Atlanta, friends just want to go to brunch, then I mean, am I gonna turn it down? Probably not. But is that something that I'm going to be a willing participant in? Absolutely not. No, no. Atlanta brunch culture is the worst. And it was just really crazy how that whole situation happened and how it even devolved to where apparently the one of the restaurants that he visited, that owner who, did not use the money that Keith Lee have gave her, or she used it for nefarious purposes as opposed to using it for the purpose that he gave it to her. She apparently tried to, I guess, commit suicide because the restaurant went under after people found out, but that's not indicative of Keith Lee. That was indicative of her motives and what she did, and the people finding out that she used the money for the wrong reasons. So everything that happened to her is unfortunate. On her business, unfortunately, was her undoing. That was on her, not Keith Lee. And so the fact that one of her, I guess, patrons or one of her business workers or one of her family members, I don't know, tried to like direct that blame at Keith Lee, stop it. That was not his fault. That was not his fault. That was yours. That was your own fault. Again, granted, I hope that she did not, succeed in that, and I'm definitely hoping that, you know she was able to recover. But anyway, also we talked about Missy Elliott being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and then some HBCU Homecoming Chronicles because that was during homecoming season. And yeah, I don't like talking about DJ Academics. Y'all already know how I feel about that nigga. That nigga is a Drake glizzy gobbler, and he just will not get off of Drake's nutsack. Excuse my language, but it's really like, yo, the way that you like continuously have his shaft in your mouth, bro. Pause. You are the absolute worst. I cannot stress how much I despise Livingston Allen from the beginning and how he made his money and how he got to where he was because of those videos talking about Chirac and where he is now. It's very exploitive, and then the way that he has a following now is just so mind-boggling how certain people are able to have a certain following, and it's thousands, literally thousands of people who have these mindsets. And it's not just him. When we were discussing what was going on at DreamCon and how DreamCon ended up inviting these regular ass streamers and content creators, not the ones who like specialize in watching anime or gaming and whatnot, just regular ass streamers like Yusuf, who went and said some incendiary shit because he wasn't familiar about the culture. It's like, what? And then I've like, we found his pages. I'm just like, yo, who are these niggas? Who are these niggas? In the words of Tommy Davidson, who are these niggas? Who are these niggas? And it's so infuriating when you get people like that. And it's like, I understand that if this was something different, if this was a different event and whatnot, you invite them, cool. But if it's involved in like nerd culture and whatnot, yes, you want more black people to be open to the space and whatnot, but don't invite people who are not willing to learn about anime and nerd culture and divert and dive into that. You invite somebody who just doesn't get it, and that's crazy. But that was one of the one faults of DreamCon this year. But either way, when you have people who have followings like that, it's really, really just, I don't know, frustrating, and it's really, really crazy. Of course, the next episode we ended up discussing the real, actual villain, which is P Diddy, and of course we talk about him multiple times this season, unfortunately, because dude is trash, and dude has, yeah, just dude has issues. But we knew this about Diddy for a long time, but now it has officially come to light about his issues with Cassie and whatnot, and then some of the foul shit that he did. Uh, of course, we then talked about Drake's Scary Hours, and we were like, or the Scary Hours editions of For All the Dogs. and how he and J. Cole were going on It's All a Blur tour. And I had said in the comments, like, yo, he needs to like he needs to what did I say? I said something to the effect of he needs to just squash his beef with Kendrick and just do a big three tour. It's funny how that episode really, really was like a precursor to what would eventually happen, but it did not happen, the way that I thought it was. We did not expect that beef to really explode the way that it did. And boy, side note, Drake lost. Get over it. He lost. Not only lyrically, not only strategically, he lost the catchy round too. He lost. He's still gonna be Drake. You'll be fine. Get over it. It's been months now. It's over. It's over. You lose. Anyway, let me move on. We yeah, that episode about Diddy being trash was really like about the Cassie Ventura case, how she filed a lawsuit and whatnot, and how he settled it really, really quickly. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. Season 5, episode 7, of course, we talk about Survivor Series and how CM Punk returned and how people were feeling about that. Episode 8, we actually invited the Nostalgia Queen, aka Bianca, to the show for the first time. And oddly enough, she ended up joining us over at Inside the Mind of a Blur. So big love to you, Bianca. Thank you for all that you do. And yes, when it comes to nostalgia, I guarantee you some of y'all ain't seeing her. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And I'm actually very, very glad that I got a chance to meet her in person. So, episode 9 was really hard for me because we were talking about, what was coming up this Christmas. And when I released that episode, it was shortly after my grandmother had passed. And during that time, I had now that in that 4-month span, I had lost my cousin. I lost 2 cousins, a mentor, and my grandmother. And then since then, of course, I've also lost a frat brother as well, and another frat brother because my mentor was a frat brother too. So it was really hard. We also talked about Jonathan Majors and his fumbling of the bag. We also talked about Section 3 of the 14th Amendment in that discussion. And of course, we talked about some crazy stuff about how some people think that South Carolina and North Carolina and Virginia and pretty much states that are above Georgia aren't the South. And I just had to look at it like, yo, really? We're having that conversation again. There's a difference between the South and the dirty South. And honestly, like, I don't see how y'all can't say that South Carolina isn't the South because have y'all been to Charleston? Have y'all been Savannah's Georgia, but have you been to Buford? Have you been to Hilton Head? I could talk about how South Carolina is probably more south than a lot of your favorites, but I ain't gonna get into that. So, episode 10, we actually sat down and we ranked all of the Dreamville projects so far. And yeah, it took a while, but we were able to actually rank all of them from every artist that was currently signed under Dreamville. Episode 11, we covered the Royal Rumble, and of course how Cody Rhodes ended up winning the Royal Rumble. Episode 12, this is when real hate started to fester within the hip hop community because this is where Megan had dropped Hiss, which was a shot at Tory Lanez, a shot at Drake, and a I guess this was one of those a hit dog or holler shots at one Nicki Minaj, who then decided she was going to drop a Bigfoot, which is still the worst diss song I've ever had. And I know I give a lot of shit to the Heart Part 6, but Bigfoot was the worst diss song I've heard in quite some time. And yeah, I think that the Heart Part 6 is probably like number 2, but Bigfoot is definitely number 1. Those two are the worst diss songs this year and might be the worst diss songs ever. It's funny how the worst two diss songs came out of the Young Money camp. I'm gonna leave it at that because listen, if you heard Lil Wayne's Ghoulish, yeah, I don't think Cash Money can make good diss songs, or people who are under Cash Money. I don't think they can make great diss songs. Let me not say that because I think Drake does have like a few good ones out there. I mean, there's obviously Back to Back, and then there's Dubby Freestyle, which I mean that was a good diss song until the story of Adidon, and then Drake with his beef with Kendrick obviously had Push Ups, which was decent, and then he had Taylor Made Freestyle, which y'all know for me is like nah. The only good thing about that one was his last verse, but the other two verses were like, no, there was no need for that. It sucked. Then you had Family Matters, which actually aged terribly. And then the Heart Part 6, which yeah. And then I don't want to forget the Buried Alive interlude part 2, which was technically a diss, but it was really just an interlude to Family Matters. So I kind of include that within Family Matters as well. It's still like that was probably the best part of it. Anyway, that we talked about that whole like beef starting, or the year of beef starting with Nicki and with Meg, and then we kind of just talked about Nicki's toxic fandom because let's the Barbs and the OV hoes are like some of the worst fandoms I've ever seen. Now, granted, as a Kendrick fan, I do know that the Kendrick stands out there are really bad too. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. Like I look at some Kendrick fans a little weird too. Like, yo, y'all being kind of weird. But them Barbs and them OV hoes, oh no, those are like they like Trump fans, yo. Like I kid you not. They are like if hip hop fans or hip hop stands had MAGA hats, it would be those two fan bases. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Somebody gonna have to tell the truth, and I'm gonna tell it. Shout out to Curtis King. All right, let me get on. Let me get on. Let me get on. We in the month of February we had our highlighting Black creators, business owners. We first started off with my boy I Hate Vonnie. Y'all have seen him multiple times on this show. Then we, of course, did Jada Goddess with her business called Bad Influence, which was one of the raunchiest episodes that we've had on this podcast. But you know what it is. It is what it is. Big shout out to Jay. She's been going through some health issues lately. Just know that I still love you, and I hope that you are doing really, really well. And I hope your kids are doing well as well. Please, please be sure that you continue your health journey. And yeah, I'm gonna definitely call you sometime, to check in on you because I know you're all the way out in California, and our times are, don't align up all the time, especially with my crazy ass work schedule. So, yeah, of course, then we did our Black Podcast highlight where we highlighted B and T of those anime girls. A big shout out to T and Bria. I really love y'all and I appreciate y'all so much. Uh, then after that, we did our 3 acts of insanity episode where we talked about this dude Yaki and his hexagonal water, which hexagonal water does not exist, y'all. It is not a thing. It does not exist. You can have, you know, as I've said before, when it comes to food who are natural hydrators, like the fruits, like watermelon, like melons, like cucumbers, yes, but that water is not different than the regular water that you get in general. It's just water that's part of a fruit, but it just happens the vegetable and the fruit have the health benefits, but I don't want to get into that. um we also of course had the racist bullying of the checkmark chiefs towards Halle Bailey because of her portrayal of the Little Mermaid, which I still don't get. But then again, racist people are they it's not I don't there's no need to understand them. They're ignorant and just leave it at that. And then we talked about, of course, the downfall of St. Augustine's University and the fact that they lost their accreditation. So that was kind of unfortunate for them to happen. And I hope that they're able to get their accreditation back really, really soon, because we cannot have our HBCUs lose accreditation. We are already down to 106. We cannot lose another one. We've lost too many, and Morris Brown just got theirs back. So I really, really hope that St. Augustine's is ready to bounce back from this, and I hope that they do. We then did the female R&B groups tournament. I'm pretty sure y'all know who won that one. I mean, listen, I tried, y'all. I tried to get SWV, but I mean, it ended up being Destiny's Child. After a very close battle, but yeah, that I believe that was our last episode on X. So from that, I know that there are certain podcasts and there are certain groups who decided not to record on X anymore. And granted, I don't want to use Spaces to record a podcast anymore. But what I will end up doing is doing more live streaming on X. So, or Twitter, whatever. But yeah, when I did the live for WWE SummerSlam, we actually did it live on on Twitter. So I need a drink of water. Excuse me. Just a little parched. But when it came to doing that, I said, okay, I see that we're getting views. So going forward, I think that we'll start live streaming onto Twitter and whatnot. But as far as actually like doing spaces, maybe once in a while you might see more. But I think the way that it's trending is like spaces is probably not, the best place to record a podcast episode. Probably, unless you just want like audience engagement. And I may still do it depending on if we do another music roundtable. But yeah, let's see. We did the corner five takeover where we had the corner five over here on the podcast. I asked them a few questions. Of course, that episode was long too, but it was still a great episode. Big love to Chris, to Phi, to Sham, to Courtney, and Simone. And much love to them. I can't wait to have y'all back on this podcast again. I might do all five of y'all separately, though. I've had Courtney on this podcast a couple of times now because, of course, she did it with Shogo High as well. So yeah, big love to the corner five. Yeah, the next episode was, of course, was the Diddler did it again, and we all know why. Then we also talked about the women's Final Four and how I was getting more numbers than the men's Final Four. And then, of course, talked about some new watches, some new listens, and things like that. But we all know about Diddy and how that video popped up. Yeah, we're not going to talk about that. Episode 20 was the WrestleMania weekend review. That was, again, a long episode, but we had to cover everything that happened on WrestleMania weekend and how that was one of the best wrestling weekends of all time. Full stop. So definitely check out that episode if you haven't got the chance. The next episode, we did our first ever blurred roundtable, and we did the ranking of the Power Rangers themes, which was a very, very, very fun episode, man. Big shout out to my boy, Let's Geek Out, aka Kadeem, and of course, my man JB versus the world. Thank you for pulling up, y'all. We really had a fun ass time doing that episode. The next episode, of course, was another Black Artist highlight, which we tried to do in February, but things didn't align. So then we did it in April, and I got the chance to, of course, talk to Imogen and talked about her rise and the things that she's doing. And of course, we also, slandered Brian McKnight, and I will forever slander Brian McKnight as long as he continues to treat his older kids the way that he does. It's forever. I don't want to say that word, but yeah, it's. I don't like him anymore. Like, I can't even listen to his music straight without getting pissed off. So yeah, Brian McKnight, if you ever decide to listen to this podcast, just know I hate the way that you walk, the way that you talk. I hate the way that you dress. I hate the way that you treat your kids. Ooh, man, I'm not trying to get like Listen, I'm not even monetized on YouTube, but I'm really, really, really trying not to get demonetized before I can even get a single check from YouTube. But just know, Brian McKnight, when I see you, if I ever see you, Brian McKnight, it is on site. I guarantee you. I don't care how old you is. I don't care about your newfound family. I don't care about none of that, boy. Treat your family that you got beforehand with some respect and with some love, acting like they are the God's curse to you, boy. God gifted you with them three beautiful children, and the way that you treat them, excuse my language, fuck you, Brian McKnight. I apologize. I apologize. I apologize. I apologize. I had to get that out there. I had to get that out there. Yeah. All right. Next was the craziest weekend of hip hop in our entire lives. We talked about Drake versus Kendrick and how that came about, how that started. And during that episode, of course, we got the unfortunate debut of the Heart Part 6 during that episode. That was ugh. The next episode, of course, we talked about the aftermath of the beef and of course the Diddy apology and all of that. We also talked about Governor Hot Wheels, aka Governor Abbott, and how he pardoned a known racist, which is still crazy. And then, of course, we talked about Texas Representative Jasmine Crockett and how she ain't beat the brakes off of MTG, but I mean she verbally abused her, which was great. And of course, we also had a sit down discussion about the transformation of club culture and how, as we got older, club culture kind of like devolved. Um, and then the very next episode, we talked about, of course, the being our fourth anniversary. So we were just discussing, what was next for us. Then of course we had Cam join us on the Hip Hop is Great but Weird Right Now episode, and we go through the Forbes 50 greatest rappers of all time, which was still a trash list. And then we talked about the Double XL freshman a little bit. And of course, we talked about the pop out concert that Kendrick Lamar held right before he dropped the video for Not Like Us. Then episode 27 was the Money in the Bank weekend review for wrestling heads. And then I did a bonus episode, of course, about the how, or let me get my words right. So the bonus up the second bonus episode talked about Joe Biden dropping out of the race and then pretty much putting all of his stock and encouragement behind Kamala Harris to be the next presidential candidate for the Democratic Party. And so with her taking over in the race, and just the amount of chaos that it caused and how Republicans still can't really like get the messaging right around her, especially with now we're in like 90 days before the election itself. And I'm just using that as it's really probably less than 90 days, but yeah, it's about to be a sprint. And right now, Republicans are confused because her stock keeps rising and Trump just continues to fumble the bag as he should, because I don't understand why they would try to put him back in office again. But insanity is doing something over and over and over and expecting a different result. And they've proved that they are insane. I ain't go talk about all Republicans. I'm just talking about the MAGAs. And then how some black men on Facebook try to like do their best. I don't know why they love Trump so much. I don't get it. Because in my honest opinion, I will still never vote for someone who tried to execute 5 innocent black boys. I'm talking about the Central Park 5, who are now called the Exonerated 5. I will never vote for someone who tried to not only publicly but actually tried to get those 5 boys executed and still has not apologized for it. I don't need any other reason not to vote for Trump. There are plenty of reasons why I will not vote for him, but the main reason is because of that. I will never vote for Trump. I will never vote for his children. Unless, of course, they do something completely different than what he's done. I will never vote for them. I will never vote for anybody who supports Trump. I don't understand why black men, especially, are so, or at least some black men. I ain't gonna say all, because a lot of us do have common sense, but there's a pocket of black men who, I guess, I don't know, they like him and they want to vote for him. Maybe because he helps them with the, like, when it comes to tax breaks. Maybe they are the ones who are getting more money back. Maybe because they're in a different tax bracket than me. I don't know. Maybe he exudes some sort of, I guess, strength, if you want to call it that. I don't see the strength within Trump. I don't know, but I don't get it. I don't get it. But I will say this again. He literally tried to have them lynched, and he literally wanted them executed. I will never vote for DJT for that reason alone. Moving on. Our last episode, of course, we talked with Polo Born Fly and my boy King Telliano from Mike Check Waifu Waifu. We got into a little bit of an anime discussion, and we had an absolute ball. That was a very, very, very fun episode. And now we're here, guys. So, what to expect for season 6? Well, as I said, I'm going to be in a new environment. I'm in the same, apartment that I'm in, obviously, but it's going to be more of a studio. You'll actually get to see what the studio looks like within the next month or two. And, it's going to be, I think it's going to be fine. Expect more guests, obviously. Expect some merch to actually really like come out for real for season 6. Expect us to continually have interviews with content creators and highlighting like the black artist, the black business owner, the black streamer, the black gamer. We're still about that. We are still about our business here, and we are going to continue that until, I don't know, something tragic happens to me. Knock on wood, nothing tragic better happen. But either way, expect more music roundtables. We actually didn't do a lot of music roundtables this season. I believe we only did like the hip hop groups, the hip hop duos, and then the female R&B groups. Oh, and then we did ranking Dreamville. So we only really did like 4. We're definitely gonna have some more music roundtables, and then we're also gonna have some more blurred roundtables on top of that. So definitely stay tuned for that. And of course, we're going to retool a couple of things. We'll see. You're going to see our faces more often, obviously. Hopefully, with the the live that I put on YouTube and whatnot, you'll actually see like the intro track and whatnot. You'll see an actual video ahead of time. I'm gonna try to put it together like a video package and whatnot, so that way we can actually have an intro video for these live videos and shit. And yeah, expect a lot of good things. I'm going to do my best to build up that Twitter page, or the new Twitter page that we had, because unfortunately Elon decided that we were not following the rules, which I still don't get what rules we broke. But that app is cooked, but I gotta use it. Unfortunately, I have to have some sort of social media presence, so it is what it is, I guess. In any case, guys, thank you for joining me on this long season. Thank you for embracing the changes that happened. Thank you for following up with me when I was having a little bit of a crisis regarding my family. Thank you just for keeping me in your prayers, and continue to listen to the Chaotic Culture podcast. Tell your friends about it, tell your family about it, tell your dog about it, tell everybody about it. Let them know, like, if you want to hear a podcast that we not just shooting the shit, but we actually like to read and do research, not only on the topics, but we also like to talk to the black content creators and whatnot. If you are about uplifting the newer generation within our black communities, if you are all about seeing how they thrive and the different paths that they take to be successful, this is the podcast for you to check out. If you into nerd shit, if you into wrestling, if you into some anime topics, if you into all of that, this is the podcast for you. And especially if you love music, if you love how we talk about music, especially with hip hop, especially with R&B, like this is the podcast for you. Again, we're not a music podcast, but we are a music based podcast because everything within the black community is based in hip hop, whether we think it or not. Even the alts black community has roots in hip hop. Hip hop has grown to the point now where it's pretty much like become part of our culture. And so, with that, of course, I'm going to be signing out here in just a minute. Before we do, I definitely want to go ahead and do the rundown one more time so that way you guys can check out these businesses, these podcasts, these content creators, these artists who are out here doing amazing things. So, once again, shout out to Show Go High and Inside the Mind of a Blur. Those are the other two podcasts that I'm a part of. Definitely shout out to my chick waifu, man. Thank y'all for blessing me. Thank y'all for coming through, man. I hope to be on the episode with y'all on y'all's podcast real soon. I'm looking forward to that. Also, of course, shout out to Worst Jen and Blaname. I know that they haven't done anything in a while, but much love to them over there, man. They still keep continuously inspire me to do this thing and to keep going. Shout out to the Truth and Transparency podcast with Brother X, the Culture Scientist, and Mr. Smith. Y'all already know we running it back, y'all. Y'all already know we are running it back. So definitely be sure that y'all come through. Definitely shout out to K Renee. Eventually, I don't know whether she's gonna continue doing a podcast or whether she's gonna bring one back. I'll have to ask her, but definitely check out her novellas under the pen name Sedona Rose. She's still writing, so there's that. Definitely shout out to It's So Real with Raquel and Onaji. Dad Needs to Talk with Rob the Father of Vash. Analytical where shit gets critical. Geek Set Podcast, who by the way they interviewed Kev on stage and a couple other people. I can For some reason I always forget their names because I know who they are. It's just mind blip. Kevin on stage is really like the only one that I can just think of off the top of my head. But they are still doing amazing things over there. And Geek Said already knows that my podcast is kind of like a reflection of theirs. Like I base a lot of my shit based on what they do, man, because I'm so inspired by what they do over there. So definitely shout out to Geek Said. Anime Junkies 3 Reasons the podcast, those anime girls, and the commute. Also, shout out to Black Geek Energy with my boy Jared and DeMarcus. I meant to add them on there, but I was definitely on their podcast, and I know that Jared actually continuously listens to this podcast as well. He was a little upset that I'm taking a break, but hey, bro, it is what it is. You know, even I need rest sometimes. So, definitely shout out to y'all. I'm definitely gonna have both of y'all on this podcast real soon as well. For our black content creators, shout out to Off Black Mag with Aaron. I definitely did a sort of kind of an interview with him as well. Like I did more of an part of an article that they wrote. Shout out to HBCU Anime with my boy Evan. Sundari, of course, is taking a break. So big shout out to Erica whenever she decides to return, if she wants to return. Shout out to Cerberus Entertainment. Shout out to Tatted Poodle, the Geechee Gamer, who I saw at DreamCon. Big love to you and Ness Monster, her sister. Big shout out to Q and Nessa, man. Like for real. That's my Charleston family. Like I love y'all to death. Like for real, I love y'all. So I hope to one day have both of y'all on this pod so we can just kick it and have a good time. Shout out to Icarus Metro Comics with my boy Calvin. Shout out to the gang Hub Taku. I Hate Vonnie and of course Tam. Big shout out to Shelby with Simply Janine, Simply Baked, and Rose Less Traveled. I don't know when Shelby is actually going to begin streaming, but when she does, of course, y'all will be in the know, and I'll make sure that y'all know. And hopefully, it'll be real soon. I know that she keeps having like setback after setback, but we're here to support you no matter what. And like, if you need anything from us, please don't hesitate to give me a call, shoot me a text, whatever you got to do. We're going to make sure that you get off the ground. Shout out to Strange Keith with Idols to Icons. Shout out to Toasty Marshmallow. Big shout out to the Corner Five again, Simone, Courtney Five, Chris, and Sham. And of course, shout out to Scuba Steve and Alpha with Birdmind Productions. Please be sure that you go and read Wake the Dead. Of course, for our black artists, big shout out to NASA, Scoozy, Jack Unionfield.me, Ellis Quinn, RJ Stackhouse, my boy Quarter, Tyrone Leak Jr., Ari Lachelle, who's been doing big things as well. She's part of the Recorder Academy now, so congratulations to Ari Lachelle. A shout out to my boy Zach Hines and Fortresses. Shout out to my girl Elena, Zainab, and of course Imogen. And then for our black businesses, Already Paid by Dre, Fresh Nerves, Righteous Minds by Timo, KSS Brand by Christina, Cream Cosmetics by Naima, Mind Over Money by Mr. Tremaine, Studio Maho with Pat and Yin, Concept Moon, She Designs 2 with Aaron, Black Magic / Lit Wands with Low and T, H4 Creative with my girl Zenobia. Happy belated birthday, Zenobia. Real Estate Stone with Meredith, Sold by Bell by Mariah. Good Vibes, Good Vibe Only with NASA, and of course Scrappy Sentiment with Sappy. I think I've covered just about all of the black businesses and artists. Uh, artists. Wow, my English is terrible. I think I've covered all of the black businesses, artists, content creators, and podcasts that I want to shout out. Of course, more will get added to this list the more that they come on this podcast. And of course, we will continue to support each and every one of you all. Thank you. Thank you for all that you've done for this podcast and for your support for this podcast and for myself and for my co-hosts. And we cannot wait to see what y'all got in store for next year, for all the amazing things that y'all are doing. And we just can't wait to see, what we got in store for our podcast. We got some shit coming up, and I can't wait to share it with you all. So with that, y'all, be sure that you like, share, and subscribe to the Chaotic Culture Podcast on your favorite DSP. Please be sure that you go to patreon.com/chaotic culture pod to get early access to the episodes as well as bonus content to the pod. Definitely you can follow us or subscribe to us at any of the 4 levels, whether it be $3, $5, $7, or $10. Once again, we appreciate your support. And you can follow us on Facebook at Chaotic Culture Podcast. You can also follow us on IG at Chaotic Culture Pod and on Twitter at Chaotic Culture One. You can follow me, Ked the Pro. That's K3D the Pro on all social media. Of course, you can follow Miss Nasa at I'm Nicasso on all social media. You can follow Sappy at Scraps14 on all social media. You can follow Law whenever he returns on Instagram at L.JR_96 and on Twitter at Law96_. You can follow Johnny at Jaylee Trey on all social media. You can follow Scuba Steve at Scuba Steve 1428 on all social media. And this has been another edition of the Chaotic Culture Podcast. This is the season 5 finale. So until next time, folks, when we return for season 6, just remember, embrace the culture, chaos rules. Be blessed, be safe, and God is love. And I am out of here. Deuces.